mic will be a hot mic. Good evening, and welcome to the Council Advisory Committee CAC meeting of the 12th of June 2023. This meeting is being held in the chambers, and the meeting is being live streamed on the Town of Kentville YouTube channel. The most up-to-date meeting package is on the Town of Kentville website. This meeting is called to order. Have all of the councillors received and reviewed their meeting packages? Does any member of council have information pertaining to a matter before this council which has not been publicly circulated? As Council Advisory Committee, CAC, we will vote as a committee to either send business forward to the council meeting for ratification, return to staff for further information or review, or defeat the recommendation. I will remind members of council that we should continue to be mindful of our decision-making wheel to make balanced and respectful decisions while adhering to our code of conduct. This council will be voting electronically on all motions except administrative, which will be by show of hands. Are there any conflict of interest issues that the council should be aware of before the meeting commences? The chair notes that we have quorum. You have been provided with a proposed agenda, and we do have one addition. So the first addition will be 3A, CAC minutes, May 8th, 2023, and those were circulated to you today. The second matter will be item 3A, special meeting of council, operational budget meeting, April 24th. This will be deleted from our agenda as this was a council meeting and not a CAC meeting. CAO, did you have any other changes to the agenda?
No, I did not.
All right, are there any further changes to the agenda? I would accept a motion to adopt the agenda as amended. Councillor York for the motion and Deputy Mayor for the second. Thank you. All those in favor? Those opposed? The motion is carried. Thank you very much. Council, you were provided with the minutes of the May 8th, 2023 CAC meeting, and they were distributed for your approval. If there are no changes, the minutes are approved as distributed. If there are changes, the recording secretary will annotate those minutes. Are there any changes? All right, moving right along. You've also got the minutes of the Special Council Advisory Committee meeting of May 15th, which was our grants meeting. If there are no changes, the minutes are approved as distributed. If there are changes, the recording secretary will annotate the minutes in red, and it will be added to the meeting file. No changes? All right, moving right along. All right, this evening we have one presentation, and it's a presentation for a proposed tennis facility. Mr. Paul Morgan will be making the presentation. And Paul, I want to let you know that your group has been provided with the full 20 minutes. Typically, we have two presentations at CAC, and they're 10 minutes each. However, this time, knowing the work that your team has put into this and the collaboration that you have done with staff, we felt that it was important that council receive a fulsome presentation on this matter. So you do have a full 20 minutes and followed by questions from council. And I also want you to know that the matter has been put under new business for council to make recommendation or consideration after the presentation. The floor is yours.
Okay. Well, greetings, Town Council, Mayor, and councillors. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to give this proposal. I am Paul Morgan. I'm a doctor at the Valley Regional Emergency Physician area. But tonight I wear a hat as the spokesperson for Kings County Tennis Association. And the proposal is to build an indoor, year-round facility that's for racket sports, primarily tennis and pickleball. Initially it started out to be just a tennis facility, and then we realized, let's do both. There's a PowerPoint that I think you may have looked at or had access to beforehand. But I took the PowerPoint information and put it on one page because I thought one page is easier. And that's what I just circulated. So I'll kind of wander down the one page with you. The plan is, as I said, for a year-round facility, 4 tennis courts, 8 pickleball courts. You can usually get about 4 pickleball courts on the area of 1 tennis court. So that's why there's more pickleball courts, because they're smaller. The location, across from the indoor soccer facility and across the street from the King's Academy School, so kind of a convenient place. The benefits, I just listed them. Seniors, right now, how many people play pickleball? Hundreds and hundreds, and there's a waiting list. Tennis, the youth and seniors play tennis, and there's no facility in the valley for indoor tennis or, the pickleball. They go from church to school to Louis Millet, trying to find places, and still there's lineups and there's no facilities that will service them. I put disabled because tennis is now a wheelchair sport. At the Atlantic Tennis Center in Bedford, there's groups that play with wheelchair and have a great time, and there's professional instructors that do that. So we plan to do that here. If there's a diesel backup generator, it could be funded and become an emergency comfort center as well, because it's a big facility. Hopefully we won't have to use that, but we'll probably get apply for the grant to get the generator, and then if we need it, it's there. The healthy, active living and the social connections, that's really the key of what it's about, whatever the age of the people participating. And almost for selfish reasons, the more people that use this facility, you have more fit people, more socially connected people. I will see fewer people in the emergency department. So it's a win-win. The need, demand, Kentville's a growing population. As I said, there's no indoor racket facilities. 600 pickleball players on waiting lists. Isn't that amazing? I mean, 2 years ago, there were probably 150, 200. It's just gone like an avalanche. So funding, so far, on the second page, I gave a handout to you. Tennis Canada looked at what we were proposing, and they pick 5 facilities across Canada each year, and with Rogers, they give 200,000 seed money. They give 100,000 around January, then they give 50,000 2 more times during the year. But more importantly than the money, they give a lot of guidance, in the building of the facility and in the running of the facility. They say that, you should run it for juniors. This is how you run the junior program. This is how many tournaments you should have. These are the kind of instructors they have. These are the qualifications they have. So it's not left, just with the money and see you later. They kind of have a hand in it the whole time. So it's a tremendous asset. And they looked at our place. They've got over 100 people asking for this, and for next year they picked us as one of 5. So that's a bonus. Then the other lists, there are people that are grants that are, we've talked to John Lohr of the MLA, and he's in great support of this. He's hoping that Kentville Town is in support of it also. We've also talked to Cody Blois, and he's in support of it also, and the two of them said that they would help with funding as well. They didn't come up with a number, but they said if this can be built, it's going to be tremendous. And then I listed a couple other ones there that we're applying for that, because initially, the cost of the bubble was going to be maybe 800,000, and then we thought, and we got more bids out, and it was like, that's just for the bubble, not the finishing of the tennis courts, and it goes like 1 million, and so we're looking at 1.5 million, 2 million. Then we thought we'd get bids for a solid structure, just like the tennis, just like the indoor soccer facility, and for solid structure, you're looking at more like 3 million. So we've got 5 bids so far, and we have to kind of look and see what the grants add up to and what we can manage. As I said, it cost 2.5 to 4.1 million, 5 construction bids received. They're all good bids. They've all built tennis facilities other places in Canada and the States, and actually a couple of them around the world. So we have to kind of just see. We're also working with Brad Lawler, who's head of Tennis Nova Scotia, and he has lots of access to what facilities would fit this kind of population base. And there's another chap, Kurt Camperman, who's not here tonight, but he's said he wants to help out with this as well. He was the director of the Atlantic Tennis Center, and before that, he was in charge of all amateur tennis in the United States. And he's got a girlfriend up here, so he's going to come up here more often. So he said, "I will help you build this. Just I'll be behind you, but you guys do the work, and we'll kind of speak in your ear." So he can kind of help design whether it's going to be more like 2.5 million or 4.1 million. They know more about that than I do, really. The timelines: 2003. We're asking you for the land and a grant. Next come the architectural drawings, which all these companies have submitted architectural drawings, but we have to kind of see which ones fit our budget and our land. And then after this meeting, we'll be getting grant proposals into the MLA and the MP and Tennis Nova Scotia, and like the list had there. And then we hope to start building it in the spring of next year. And that's what Tennis Nova Scotia said is feasible, and they've got earmarked our money for that period of time. So then the request from the good town council here tonight is for a lease, similar to the lease on the soccer facility already, for just a nominal $1 a year for, I think theirs is for 100 years. I'd be happy with 50 years. And then we're hoping that the town council would give us a grant, and whether they can come up with that in 1 year, or if they can spread it over a few years. I'll leave that open. The last thing is if there's any help they can give with operational expenses, such as things like snow removal, bringing water and sewer to the facility, and maybe some janitorial sort of things. And that is the end of my presentation. I can stay and answer questions.
All right,
I wanna
Paul,
keep it kind of
well,
brief.
thank you very much, and I'm going to tell you that 7 minutes, 18 seconds.
That's not too bad.
That's definitely a record.
There we go.
So I will open the floor to our members of council and Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Paul, for your presentation. I would agree with respect to the facility. I think it's a great idea, and certainly the pickleball folks are fast and furious coming, and tennis. So I think it's a fantastic idea. So I'm going to just ask you a couple of questions.
Yeah.
So have you approached, say, a large donor? Like when I think about the Credit Union Rec complex, just wondering if you have any feelers out for a large donor.
A corporate donor, you mean?
Yeah, correct, sorry.
We have not, because we thought we would get the grants from the public first. Although we've got people in mind, but we
Okay.
didn't. And Jan works a lot getting donations and fundraising for hospitals in the past.
Okay.
And so she sort of said, let's do one big donor and then get smaller donors. So it's in the works, but we haven't approached anybody yet because we didn't think the time was right.
Okay, and just one other question, if
Yep.
have you done sort of like a forecast as to what your operating statement looks like, what sort of revenue you suspect you're going to generate, and what the cost to operate the facility might
Well,
be?
we got one from the Cougar Dome, their budget, and they have a similar kind of thing, but without the pickleball. And we got one from the ATC, and we looked at their budget, and it'll just be sort of half to 2/3 of what their budget is. So we have those that we work with in our meetings.
Okay, and do you see it being managed by the town, or you see it being managed by yourselves?
We see it by being owned and operated by us.
Okay,
So it's a nonprofit society that we formed,
okay,
and it would be owned and operated by us.
okay, great. That's all I have, thank you.
That's sort of how
Oh, sorry.
other facility. That's how the soccer facility works.
Yes.
They have their own kind of
Board of directors,
nonprofit
yeah.
facility. It's not for profit, non-profit, but they got the land and they operate them.
Yeah, correct. Okay, thank you very much.
Yep.
Yeah, great.
Councillor York.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that a sport named after a dog would grow quite as quickly as it has.
Pickleball, yeah.
It is
It's-
wild.
Well, it's easy to play and it's a lot of fun, yeah.
Well, you might see me in the yard, that would happen, so. Anyway, the $200,000 Tennis Canada grant, does that money come to you regardless, or is it contingent on other funding, or is that yours free and clear?
I think it's contingent on the facility coming to fruition.
Sure, but does it rely on you? Okay, no, that's fine, thank you.
They wouldn't, like, if it doesn't work out, they'll say, okay, it was a nice try, thanks for, the money isn't gonna happen. It's not happening, it's not happening.
Okay, and do you know if you're able to bank it for a year, or do you have to spend it within a time frame?
They're from Tennis Canada,
Yeah,
Rogers. They said that they would, they didn't really answer, they didn't say. They
great,
said they'd give 100,000 at the beginning,
okay,
and then 50,000 like 4 months later, and 50,000 4 months later.
okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's it, thank you.
They also said the first grant is the hardest, so we'll be the first in. Because they said nobody wants to be the first in, so they said they're the first in.
Counselor Maxwell.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul, for your presentation.
welcome.
Very informative, and it's nice to see an initiative like this coming from the community. Your group has done a lot of preparation work, and I see this as being a very sustainable project. Tennis is popular, and pickleball is madly popular. I think I taught it about 15 years ago in school, and it was one of the most popular items that I could teach to high school students, and they loved it. And I'm not surprised now that the adult portion
Yeah.
of our community is catching on, because it is really, really quite a sport, and I think you're going to find the courts are going to be full there for a long time.
I think so.
So, thank you. I don't have any specific questions. I just think it's great to see an initiative like this come forward. So,
Thanks.
thank you.
Counselor Huntley.
Hi, Paul, thank you.
Hi.
Just a couple of questions. One is, in the plans that you have for the building, do you have any rooms that people can rent so you can get extra income in?
One of the plans is to have a lounge kind of attached to it, so there's the tennis and racquetball courts. Then there's a place where you can sit down and have a cup of coffee, and maybe have some, sort of like the curling center has. It's got a refrigerator and a couple of things to heat up things if you want to bring in some food. So those facilities can be used. Say Michelin wanted to have an end-of-year party. They could come and be taught pickleball for like 5 or 10 minutes, play pickleball, and have a party. So
Right.
that would be rented out for some money. Is that the sort of thing you're asking?
Yeah, for sure,
Yeah.
yeah. And secondly, you talked about the bubble. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
What a bubble is?
Yeah,
Okay, so there's it's a sort of a plastic frame that is inflated, and it's kept up by air. So you go in the door, and there's air pressure that holds it up. And different companies do it different ways. Some of them string this material kind of ropes around it the whole way. Others have, but the pressure has to hold it up. And that's sort of the least expensive kind. So it's just like a tent that you inflate. And other ones have got aluminum ribs or stainless steel ribs that are galvanized, or galvanized ribs rather, and it holds the bubble up on top of them, so the inflation isn't necessary. That's what they mean by the bubble.
okay. And is it sustainable for our type of weather?
Well, that's why we've got the bids for the hard structure. Because when when the ATC gets wind and snow,
Yes.
it has fallen a couple times. The Cougar Dome has it blows in the wind. So it's not quite it's less expensive, but not as durable.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Zabian.
Thanks, Paul. I know we've talked about this before, and I'm sure it'll be well used. I have to ask you a hard question, though.
Yeah.
If Canfil, if we're able to provide the land, and hypothetically, we're not able to provide the 500,000 in funding, is that gonna be the end of your project, or do you have Plan B in place? I'm just,
Well, we'll probably go to, no, that's not the end.
yeah.
I mean, we're hoping that you'll come up with some money, because I think it kind
Right.
of makes sense. But say you said, look, it's been a tight year and we have no money. We just press on. I
Okay.
think it would happen, I shouldn't say it, I think it'll happen with or without the money, but it's probably true.
Okay.
But I think if John Law said, now, if you didn't give us any, you'd probably get a few phone calls. To say, John Law would say, like, come on, pony up some money, I'm freaking kicking in, it's been your town. But we wouldn't say, okay, that's the end of the destination, we can't go any farther. We'd just say, well, we would hope that you might kick in later, maybe.
Right, but you'd be happy with the land, for
Yeah,
sure,
the
the
land's-
location, yeah.
Yeah, land's a good
Okay.
start. And,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, sorry, I just had another question. Paul, so I'm just looking at the Kings County Vision Grant. And they talk about awards more than 50,000 will require proof of actual expense and payment and a review of engagement by a licensed CPA. So have you approached the County of Kings yet?
Yeah.
And have you provided them with that information, and do you have a sense of what?
No, but we sat down a couple times with them and talked to,
Okay.
I forget his name, the administrator, and he said this is exactly the kind of program they want to support.
Okay,
He said sometimes nobody applies for the money and it isn't given out. Other times there's somebody who applies for maybe 50 or 100,000 or whatever. So he said you could have it all available or part of it available. And he said, once you get them rolling a bit, come and I'll give you the application.
And that really is the idea with these things, because when you get Tennis Canada on side, you get Kings County Vision, you get the province on side, then typically the feds will come on side. So
Yeah.
it's all something that really has to be done collaboratively, so.
Yeah, but
that's-
we met with him a couple times and he said this is exactly the kind of project that Kings County wants to support
Wonderful.
in this. And he said the Vision Grant is for these kind of things.
Yes, absolutely, it is, for sure. Okay, thank you very much, I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Sure.
Are there any further questions for our presenter? Well, Paul, thank you very much. Great presentation.
welcome.
Your cut sheet is perfect and gives us the information we need. And as I said, this now will move to our new business later on in the meeting.
Okay,
Thank you.
so we'll kind of expect to hear, I'll touch base with you later on. Okay.
CAO will touch base with you.
Okay, thanks.
Yep, perfect. Thank you. All right, moving right along to our department reports and recommendations. The directors have provided their reports to council for review and will provide an update and receive questions from council and council questions directly to the presenters. And the reports will be presented and are part of the record of this meeting. Only items of new business arising from the reports will be taken for motion. And CAO Troke, if you could introduce our department reports and recommendations.
Thank you, Mayor Snow. So tonight, with our finance department, Director Matthews will be discussing 3 separate areas with council this evening.
Good evening, Council. My report this evening has identified some areas of operations that we have been involved in the finance team. You'll note the first 2 items talk about our billings. Last month I did share that we had sent out our tax bills and water bills. And as you can see, collection is not an issue for the town of Kemptville, which is very good. The value of our tax accounts that are showing there as outstanding would be for the current year interim as well as all past years, and the value represents about 10% of the current year's interim bills. So it is very, very low value still remaining outstanding. We are continuing to work towards our audit, which will start next Monday. Results of those will come forward to audit committee when available. We are recruiting for the finance accountant person, so you may have seen those ads flowing through our pages. From a financial point of view, you can see that we have ratified the Town of Kemptville Water Commission budget on May the 10th. Investment Advisory Committee also met on May the 10th. I've identified for you where our investment values landed at the end of April, around 13.2 million at cost. And for March 31st, 2023, I have provided for you in Appendix A detail of the investment values at the beginning of fiscal 22-23 and where they landed and how those changes were derived. We will talk about those in more detail with Investment Committee this week, but you may have noted that there are some significant changes in those areas, and those overall are about managing our risk, increasing the quality of the assets, equities that we have, and also just the composition of our investments have created an increase in our dividend value. We are also working through our consolidated financial results. We continue to have a consolidated surplus and would anticipate, based on previous approved transfers, that will show a balanced position, except for sanitary sewer at this point. And you do have before you a request for consideration of the sanitary sewer operating reserve being utilized for the deficit that is showing. That deficit right now is at $33,057. We don't expect any adjusting entries, so expect that to be the end. To mitigate that shortfall, We were looking at utilizing the operating reserve for sewer. That value right now is over 500,000, so it would be quite sufficient to offset that. So staff do recommend that we, that the committee approve moving the value of the deficit to be offset by the operating reserve. So the withdrawal from the reserve to offset that deficit, rather. My apologies.
All right, thank you very much. We'll take that recommendation right now before you continue. So council, we have a recommendation from staff recommending that council advisory committee recommend approval to council at the June 26, 2023 council meeting to offset the deficit of $33,057 using the sanitary sewer operating reserve fund. If someone could move that, please. Councillor Huntley, thank you, and Councillor York for the second. So it has been moved and seconded that Council Advisory Committee recommend approval to council at the June 26, 2023 council meeting to allocate $33,057 from the sanitary sewer operating reserves to offset the shortfall. Is there any discussion on this matter? Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Your Worship. I can direct this to Director Matthews or CEO Took. Can we just get a little bit more dispo around why the deficit has occurred? Unless we don't want to get into it.
No, absolutely. We can probably give a few short snips before
all.
the financial presentation, but certainly the cost of expenditures have increased, whereas our rates haven't increased enough to match it. That's
Okay.
generally speaking,
Yes.
but the details of individual expenditures I don't have at my fingertips.
No, just it's
but
primarily the
will.
rates.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
And I think in a short, and you've heard, Director Bell a number of times talk about how the costs around a number of different things on the water side have increased. You're seeing similar cost increases on the sewer, and we haven't had any significant adjustments to that sewer rate. So that's going to be a piece in the future that's going to have to be adjusted to keep up with not just the operating pressures, but then also longer term, the capital pressures with regards to the regional sewer facility itself.
Okay, wonderful, thank you.
Is there any further discussion on this matter? Are you ready for the question? The question is on recommendation to council at the June 26th, 2023 council meeting to allocate $33,057 from the sanitary sewer operating reserve to offset the shortfall. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed, and the motion is carried. Thank you very much. And your next report?
Sure. The next report is bringing forward a recommendation around a change to our accounting policies. And it's coming forward this evening. It's with regards to asset retirement obligations. We are subject to the public sector accounting standards as a town. There is a new standard that has come out, Section 3280, asset retirement, and it has come into effect April 1st of 2022. It is a policy that is kind of a significant departure from what we have normally done in the past. What it is trying to do is really look at the regulations that define the work that we do, the assets that we have, and if there is an obligation that we know of today, whether it's in our Occupational Health and Safety Act, whether it's in environment, asbestos management, all of those pieces of legislation that guide us, it's looking through those and making a determination as to whether or not they say, when you decide you're gonna take this building down or sell this building, do you need to do something to it? Asbestos removal as an example. If you do, then you really should be considering what that cost is to you today and accounting for that in your books. It is really looking at those environmental issues that may impact the work that we do and starting to provide a more wholesome and comprehensive approach to how we account for that. This policy is a requirement through the handbook. I know that there are challenges in trying to identify what all of those obligations may be, measuring the impact of those, quantifying it, getting that in our statements, and then figuring out what the financial implications of that are around our bottom line. Because of that, there have been some concerns, I would say, around other towns and municipalities around how to go about this work and get accurate information. If we can't have accurate information, then will this allow our audit to come through clean, as we would call it, or whether we would have some qualification around that? So because of the significance of that, we felt it was important to bring it forward for conversation tonight. The policy that has been provided is very much the handbook section. So the policy sets out the statement, the purpose of bringing this forward. It includes the definitions as outlined in the handbook section, and it includes the procedures, and those are basically what is in the handbook. The thing that varies is really around the responsibilities of staff to go about doing the work, and not only doing it this year, but reevaluating it on an annual basis and ensuring that it's incorporated in just the way we do business from now on. There are really no other deviations from what is in the handbook section. We are currently doing the evaluation and feel fairly confident that we've identified most areas where we may have an obligation, and we will discuss that further with Audit Committee when we meet in July. But we aren't anticipating at this point that there is any risk that we will not be able to comply, but felt important to share with you now. The policy does require implementation on April 1st, so we would be seeking approval from council to implement retroactively back to April of 22 for the fiscal year 22-23.
All right, thank you very much, Director, for that recommendation. So council, based on the recommendation from our Director, is that CAC recommends approval to council at the June 26, 2023 council meeting to approve the asset retirement obligation policy backdated to April 1st, 2022. Thank you. Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that CAC recommends approval to council at the June 26, 2023 council meeting to approve the asset retirement obligation policy backdated to April 1st, 2022. Is there any discussion on this matter? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Worship. Director Matthews, like and I read through it the other night, but, so it's gonna depend on the type of asset that it is. It's gonna go by way of the useful life. It's gonna affect our capital budget.
Yeah.
And I don't wanna get into numbers or anything like that, because I know you're just doing work with the various
Yeah.
directors, but, so it'll be like a non-cash expenditure.
Correct.
Right, so does it look like it's gonna be an exorbitant amount that's gonna weigh heavy on that budget?
At this point, no.
Oh.
No.
Yay,
That's
good then.
Yeah, no, not at this
Okay,
point.
perfect.
And you are correct. It would, when recorded, we would have to add it to the value of the asset and then write it off
And
over
then
its
write it
life.
off of the
Yes.
useful, okay, thank
So
you.
it does actually increase the carrying value of our assets
Right.
and then our expenses related to those.
Right, exactly.
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you.
Councillor Gerard.
Thank you, Worship. And I might direct this to Dan as opposed to Director Matthews. Have we ever done anything like this before?
So I would say that as a team working on this stuff, no. I would also say that a number of municipal units, and what we kind of first understood about this was more of a reporting change, but it's much more substantive than that. The amount of energy to properly quantify the disposal of an asset is kind of a new thing. I think the closest you would have is when we do our amortization expense on the water side. But in this case here, what you're trying to do is what is the value of, and I think the director gave an example of, you had asbestos around a pipe. What's that worth 20, 25, maybe 30 years down the road? And again, the importance kind of really in bringing this to council is that you may hear some municipal units around the province either A, not be able to get this done, or B, there's the risk that some might actually get a qualified audit. So the work on this has been pretty substantive over the last couple of months. And I think it's one of those pieces now as we acquire new assets, it's gonna be something we're gonna have to put on it, and we really haven't done that before.
That's gonna be hard, especially with longevity of certain assets and going, what's it gonna cost to take this building down?
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Thank you.
Yes.
Are there any further questions for the director? Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you, Director Matthews. You mentioned the PACE program in your,
Yes.
in your presentation.
Oh,
and-
no, Kathy, not yet. We're in a motion, so,
Oh, I
Yeah,
thought you
yeah.
gave me the floor. Okay.
yeah, I did give you the floor, but
Oh.
we're still in the motion, so,
Oh, okay.
yeah,
Yeah, okay.
sorry. I'll come back to you, though.
Yeah.
Is there any further questions on the asset retirement obligation policy? I do have a really dumb question. So if you do this and we're banking the cost of if we had to tear the building down, but what if we sold the building? What happens to all that money that's on
Right.
paper?
So that would be the cost of our asset.
Okay.
And the sale price that we would get for the asset would just offset the cost, and the difference would flow through as a gain or loss.
Okay,
Yeah.
Okay.
So it gets eliminated at the time of sale.
okay,
As a
thank
gain or
you.
loss, and no question stupid.
Well, it seemed kind of lame, but anyway. So are there any further questions with regards to the asset retirement obligation policy? So you do have homework. So the question is that CAC recommends approval to council at the June 26, 2023 council meeting to approve the asset retirement obligation policy backdated to April 1st, 2022. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed, and the motion is carried. Thank you very much. All right, now questions with regards to any of the three reports provided. Councillor Maxwell, you're on first.
Thank you. So you mentioned FCM and PACE.
Yes.
And we didn't get the FCM funding for PACE program, I don't think, did we?
Sorry.
Go ahead,
Yeah.
CEO, please.
So at this point, no, and their applications are still live. What's happening at this moment in time is it's being structured so that there'll be either the option of using like a third-party financial institution, or if municipal units would want to use their own reserves to lend the money and have it come back. So that's, and we're starting very small scale. So that's, if you were going to go large scale, then the FCM piece would absolutely be a requirement of it. So at this moment, it doesn't look like the FCM is immediate, but we haven't given up 100% on that yet.
Okay, so then we're looking at putting the money into the project up front
So an
as
individual.
a town.
So actually, it would be, so that's a choice council will have to make if
Yes.
going down that road. So some municipal units have done third-party agreements with financial institutions, so the money would be borrowed from those institutions.
Right.
Other towns, if they have the reserves to do it, they will loan the reserve, and then the reserve is paid back as the individual pays it back. One of the major factors in this will be, right now, the federal government has a program where individuals can be eligible for a 0% loan, but the timing to do that is a year or two to get approval. So in some instances, what's happening is municipal units are using PACE to fund for a year, and then the federal government pays off the loan, and then the money is owed to the federal government. So there's those kinds of pieces are going to be part of that business plan that council will look at before we go ahead.
Okay, so this,
Yeah.
this will come back to us.
Absolutely.
Oh,
for a
100%,
decision.
yeah.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
I was trying to highlight in the report that we are still making considerations to bring forward something to you in the future.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Counselor Sabian.
Thanks, Director. Just wondering, has there been a change in reporting? I'm so used to seeing the operating fund and the capital investment plan for the year, and I haven't seen them for the last couple months. Are they?
The actual results?
Yeah,
against
yeah,
what-
we usually see, we see
Yeah.
them monthly, and it's kind of
Yeah.
nice just to see how things are going.
The focus, since I've been here in the last couple of months, is to get our budgets out and to get ready for audit. So the financial results for April and May are incomplete.
Okay.
And really didn't have enough relevance to bring forward. The end of March results are just this close to being complete for the auditor next week.
Okay.
And then we will focus on getting up to date for next meeting.
Monthly to see, yeah, okay.
Yeah,
That's what I wanted to know.
absolutely. So-
Thank you.
Our apologies, just a
That's
lot of
okay.
change in the last 6 months trying to address. so,
Exactly. Thank you.
yeah.
Are there any further questions for the director? Thank you very much. All right, our next report is with regards to planning and development, and I hear that we have a pinch hitter tonight with Director Bell.
Thank you, Mayor Snow. Good evening, Council. It is my pleasure to present the Planning and Development CAC staff report on behalf of Kirsten Duncan, our planning technician and acting development officer, and Lindsay Young, our community and economic development coordinator. I'll just, you all have the report, so I'll just touch on some of the highlights. Development permits, there were 16 development permits issued in the month of May, I should say. I think it says April in a report, but that should say the month of May, with a total building valuation of $2,299,966. Under subdivision applications, there were no new files had been submitted for final registration this month. Skipping ahead a few, the town of Kentville is partnering with Black Women in Excellence and the portal on an entrepreneurship program for Black youth. The 8-week workshop will run mostly out of the Kentville Rec Center this summer, and registration is now open. We are now encouraging participation, and the program is free to participants. In Lindsay Young's report, hiring of summer VIC staff is complete. We are thrilled to welcome Kathy Wynott to the VIC management team as the assistant manager for 2023. Kathy will be training with Susan to take over as manager in future seasons. A big thank you to the VIC staff for their support in preparing the season opening in the bench unveiling event 2 weeks ago. I guess I'll just note some of the upcoming special events in Kentville. You have them all anyway, but the Devil's Half Acre Motorcycle Rally is June 25th and 6th. The Kentville Mural Festival is July 14th to 16th. The Canada Cup Mountain Bike Nationals are July 20th to 23rd. The Multicultural Festival is September 9th. The Pumpkin People Festival is October 7th to 29th. That's too far away to think about. And the Harvest Festival is October the 7th. And the last thing I'll touch on are projects that the Kirsten has here under her section. McDougall Heights rezoning. The first reading for the rezoning was held at council on May 30th, and staff are preparing for the public hearing that is set for next week, June 21st, at 6 p.m. at the Kentville Fire Hall. The other subdivision bylaw amendment, staff held a public participation meeting on May 25th. And there were 3 people in attendance and 2 people virtually via Zoom. Staff are preparing for the public hearing, which is set for June 20th at 6 p.m. in council chambers. And that is the summary of the planning and development report.
All right, are you prepared to take questions on that report?
I'll do my best and
All right.
may rely on Dan for backup if
All right.
necessary.
Councillor Zabian.
Probably direct this to the CAO. Just wondering if we can get a copy of the activity report from the planning department. It's not, it says it's attached there, but I don't have a copy of it.
Yeah, happy to get that to you, and I think it just wasn't aggregated.
Wasn't-
We've got the long detailed one, I don't think we had the
Exactly, no,
aggregated one
I do have a copy here, which we can distribute
on its way.
right away.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Worship. It's not a question, it's just a comment. I just wanted to do a shout out for Kirsten and Lindsay. I know they're carrying a lot of load in that department, and it's really great work. And when you see things like partnering with Black Women in Excellence and the portal and the registration that's gonna be opening and a free program, like it's just, it boggles my mind that they're handling so much with such a heavy load with such a busy town, so kudos to them.
If they aren't listening, we'll pass it on. If they may be listening, who knows?
Thanks.
All right, thank you, Deputy Mayor. All right, Director Bell, you have a supplementary staff report. If you wanted to go do that now? McDougall Heights rezoning?
Yes, I
Or
guess
did
I
you
did.
wanna-
I do have that, more to go along with when my sort of turn comes up after recreation, but I can do it now if you
Okay.
wish, since I'm here. I guess it kind of does relate to planning, perhaps more so than engineering. I can hardly read it, the font's too small, but I think everyone has it in front of them. I won't read through it all, but it certainly just, the highlights, of course, are on stormwater management, and traffic study, and sanitary sewer capacity are the main highlights of the report, and certainly welcome to take questions if there are any.
Councillor Gerard?
Thank you, Worship. Director Bell, just curious, we know that there's been water issues, right, stormwater issues and stuff in McDougall Heights, up till this point. Does more have to be done because of that issue as it develops further up? And my concern is we've had issues now without the top part being developed. How do we eliminate the issues down below? And number two, I guess, would be, who's responsible for it? Because there's always, when someone has stormwater issues on their property, it seems to be a back and forth between the developer and the town.
I think I know the areas you're referring to, Councillor, and the newest phase of McDougall Heights that's recently been taken over by the town as far as the street goes. There's a handful of homes in there. The first lift of asphalt isn't on the street, so any water that does run down between properties, typically you see swales on a hill like that from between properties and of course across the backyards. That is private, and that needs to be done as the lots are developed. When they sell these lots, they're typically a forested lot, but it does have a 6 to 10% grade on the lot. And as they're clear cut and flattened, oftentimes they flatten the front to build the house, and then the backyard becomes steeper than it used to be. So until that's vegetated and swales are maintained, those are done either by the lot developer or the home builder, and they get directed towards the street. So as they're directed towards the street now, they're running past the gutter and onto the asphalt, and then down the road, I think we mentioned that before, and bypassing many of the catch basins on their way. That won't be alleviated until that top lift of pavement is placed on that street. We don't like to do that, even though it is the responsibility of the developer. We hold a bond in the amount of 120% of the value of the pavement. It's not ideal to do that until a lot of the heavy equipment is, usually we see 75% build out is the ideal time to pave the top lift. That development is probably at 20% build out for that phase, that one street, with I think full vacancy on the north side of the road and about 50% filled in on the south side, the larger lots being on the south side. That's where the runoff is coming, from their backyards. And I've been dealing with about three or four different property owners there have just built in the last anywhere from 6 months to a year and a half, and they're dealing with some runoff issues that they have to address, as well as the developer. So I've been certainly in touch with him, and he's got some work to do. We own a piece of green space parkland that's meant to be a trail, but as of now, it's unimproved land that, you know, the water's originating south of that and running across our parkland and then onto the private properties. So it's gonna be a mixture of some swaling and some pipe work by the developer to address those issues, and he's aware of it and need to get him back on site. But
Thank you.
to me, not the town's issue.
Are there any further questions for the director on this report? And this report will form part of the package with regards to this rezoning, in which we are having a public hearing on June 21st. So you will have access to all the information we have received at meetings, all of the emails and letters that we have received from residents, and any other documentation that has come forward will all form part of that package. CAO, did you have something that you wanted to add to this?
Yeah, so just thank you for that. So there's a couple items in here, and I just want to make sure that council it recognizes that coming out of first the traffic study, there was the left-hand lane onto Acadia. And so certainly what our anticipation here that as the town, we're going to make sure that that occurs. The issue of sidewalks or with regards to active transportation on the bottom of Acadia, because the change in the subdivision bylaw will mean that the developer will be doing that on the top part of the hill. So there's an element here in the future that will have to be brought forward to council with regards to the best way and the most economical ways for addressing that. With regards to sanitary sewer, and I think Director Bell did an excellent job here pointing out that the capacity study showed that there was the ability to service 354 units. And if you were to go to the fourth building or potentially beyond that, the pressure would then mean that any of that sanitary sewer would most likely go to the Donald Hills, which of course is a newly announced road that we have received funding for through ICIP. And that work we anticipate will be out on the street this summer to be getting bids on. And so in addition, as the secondary plan moves forward, there's obviously going to be pressures associated with that zoning, number of units, and so on. So just making sure council is aware that the Donald Hills Connector creates a different place for stormwater, water, and sewer to be moving. And of course, that is the most logical way for anything beyond the 354 residential units that were identified as part of the sewer study. And so I just want to make sure that that was clear, is, as I know many folks have been getting questions around this, we wanted to make sure folks had answers to that. And obviously as the public event occurs, you know, this will be something I'm sure folks will have different questions about as well. So just wanted to make sure we highlighted that.
All right, CAO, thank you. Are there any further questions for the CAO or the director with regards to Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Worship, through the chair. CEO. CEO Troke, so you talk about that left hand onto Acadia, making sure that it occurs, and then the developer being responsible for the top part, the sidewalks. So that bottom part, when you get to that part, I found what you said a bit ambiguous. So it will come back to council, but the idea would be that we would put some sort of sidewalk on the existing part, if I understand correctly.
CAO.
Sure. So you've got a combination of trails and street there for individuals to be able to move essentially north and south.
Okay.
And so there's a number of different considerations on the bottom or Acadia. There's a number of different considerations around the trail. So there's going to be something to make sure that there's connectivity from essentially the Donald Hills down through the new development to Park Street. And so just making sure that, you know, our intention would be to be putting options obviously in front of council around that, because the developer would be required to put a transportation mechanism there for individuals to be able to walk. We're going to want to make sure we continue that down through. And so, and it may be more than one. It may be a combination of trails and/or some kind of an active transportation piece going down as well. But we want to make sure we flag that we don't plan on leaving a gap in the
Right.
middle of this as we're going through this process.
Okay, that's perfect. Thank you very much.
Are there any further questions with regards to this report? And if something comes up, just remember that we will be having the public hearing on June 21st, and if you have any questions at that time, there's no issue to bring them forward. This is ominous.
If I might, if I can channel Kirsten for a second, because she and I specifically discussed this, at the public hearing, for the public, even if they've already presented something in writing, if they want to ensure that they are heard at the public hearing, they should appear at the public hearing and speak at the public hearing or submit something in writing to the public hearing, so that indeed they, although I understand that there's a package of materials that have been gathered together, they want to be heard at the public hearing, and they should make sure that they come forward at the public hearing or send in their written submissions specifically for the public hearing, because we are in a particular process that's being followed. Thank you.
Councillor York.
Thank you. Through the chair, to the
Certainly.
CAO, is that going to be part of the communications plan for the public hearing as well, what the solicitor just mentioned?
That's my understanding.
Cool. Thank you.
Right. No further questions. Thank you
Okay.
very much,
Thank
Director
you.
Bell. We'll see you back up here in a few. All right, next is Director Bedingfield with regards to Parks and Recreation.
Good evening, Council. Can you hear me? This is so fancy. Wanted to start with thanking CAO Troke and Councillor York for attending the Homeless No More event that happened on the 25th in Middleton. That event was the Calls to Action event that was put together by Homeless No More for organizations and different levels of elected officials throughout the valley, so we appreciate you attending. The event called for immediate and collective action and offered a variety of policy priorities for all levels of government, informed by the best available data and informed by community organizations around ways to address homelessness. Staff are also working on preparing an application for the CMHC Housing Accelerator Fund to support the Town of Kentville Housing Action Plan. We did submit a grant this past week to the Innovation Fund for the Municipal Affairs. This is a larger grant that will have a really tight window for the application process, so we're going to be starting that process. So this is a bit of your forewarning that next month I'll be coming and be requiring a motion to get your support to be able to move forward on that application process. I just wanted to flag that for you. Under the Spike Fund, staff have started branding a new Play It Forward campaign. I'm going to give a kudos to Picto. They started this branding and we just took it, and it's great. So we're using it to play it forward, and this is a way to kind of bolster the efforts of fundraising for the Spike Fund, of which we continue to get applications for. Under facilities and operations, staff have been meeting with local sport groups, including minor baseball, soccer, hockey, figure skating, around the facility allocation policy. So we have a draft allocation policy that again focuses on equity and justice and diversity and inclusion, and what does that mean for our facility allocations moving forward. And so now we're in the consultation phase where we're meeting with the various user groups that regularly rent our facilities, to sit down with them and have conversations around what does this look like for you, how can we support your mandates along with meeting our requirements. And I'm proud and happy to say that we've gotten nothing but positive feedback and endorsement of our policy, and starting to gather into conversations around how can we support the organizations to increase their own diversity. So that's quite exciting. Staff have also started a park maintenance plan, and this is something that's a little bit more formalized than what we've been doing, and really it's a way for data collection so that we better understand where our park staff are spending their time, and what does that look like in terms of allocation of taxes, of tax user money. Facilities, Parks and Recreation Parks and Trails. This is another one, and there has been some discourse out there in the community. We did have Ducks Unlimited come in before Parks and Trails were closed for that little beat there, to do an assessment. So for those of you that don't know, the front pond of Miners Marsh has been drained of water. I believe it has risen a little bit from the last rain. And so Ducks Unlimited had their engineers come in and take a look, and it does look like there needs to be some fairly large work done to that front pond. It does seem to be leaking water, which is something that happened at the very beginning when that facility was developed. So they're doing a little bit more exploration, and then they'll come back with a report. And they are fairly confident that they have the funding able to do that work, should it need to be done. So just so that folks don't think that nothing's being done on that one. Under programs, our staff are working to get the pool open, which is always a really fun experience, but we're trucking along. It is noted that the splash pad is open now. There was an announcement made and it's going. We just need warmer weather. Today might be the day. Under the pool piece, I also wanted to highlight that we've moved swim times a little bit from previous years, not too much from last year. So there are 2 additional swim times available, and one is in partnership with Autism Nova Scotia, and that is focused on folks who have sensory needs, differing sensory needs, and then another time slot that is dedicated to the 2S LGBTQIA plus community, or rainbow community, or queer community, however they choose to be called, and for allies. So those are additional swims that we have available for community this summer. Under community outreach events, just to note that our summer staff held an event and worked really closely with some of the local organizations who work with equity deserving community members. And it's another step that we're taking on how to make sure that we're aligning all of our program and offerings with those folks in our community who may need a little extra push to get into recreation. And so you'll see our outreach staff this summer everywhere all over town, including with our partnering organizations and supporting their work when it comes to recreation and leisure education. Capital projects, just a few I wanted to highlight. There's lots of hubbub out there about the grandstands. They are currently off limits because they're under construction. And just to note that this is a way for us to move forward so that they're safer and bigger, but also, and probably most importantly, accessible. So I just want to make sure that that vernacular is in everybody's back pocket when they're talking about them. This is something that we directly heard from folks when we were talking, when we were collecting information around our inclusion and access plan for the town of Kentville, and we heard from folks specifically from Evergreen who say we love to go and watch baseball games, but we've never been able to get into the stands, so we have to park in the mud down by the ball fields, and that was one of the things that turned into a capital project. And then the Burger Hill Bike Project. This is another one I wanted to bring to your attention because it's right on the main street and you see it every time you drive by, and it's quite popular. This is a really great addition to our community that was led by community for community, so it's quite impressive, where we've had teenagers ride their bikes after school to help tamper down the dirt, so it's a pretty great facility, and you'll be seeing a lot more use of it over the summer with the request that people stay off it when it's wet. And the last piece under council updates, I just wanted to update everybody on is around when it comes to the accessibility action plan. So if you remember at the last council meeting, there were a number of memos that came to you. So staff is preparing a report to respond to those memos as per requested. So expect that in the July CAC meeting. And then under active transportation, we held our internal meeting last week, and it was really clear that decisions that are being made throughout the active transportation work are being viewed through both a CSA standards lens and also a Rick Hansen Foundation lens. And so we're quite confident as we move forward that we're doing everything we possibly can as staff to make sure that the AT plan is rolled out using every lens of inclusion and access. That's my report.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for the director? Councillor York.
Thank you. Is there an update on the ravine at this point about perhaps a timeline for when it could be opened?
There is not.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Are there any further questions for the director with regards to this report? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Worship. Hi, Rachel. Just a question around the CMHC Accelerator Fund, that grant. So how much is that grant? And when you talk about increasing housing stock, will it be utilized specifically for housing stock? I just need to get my head around that a little bit better.
Yeah, it's a really big grant.
Okay,
Yep.
okay, just a really big grant. That's
It's a really big grant, but
Okay.
it's meant to be an accelerator, so it's everything from stuff that's underground, it's meant to be stuff that's overground, and to get the actual houses built,
fine. Wow.
to be able to do things. So part of that is making sure that we have, part of the work is making sure that we are in the process of creating a housing action plan. That's part of the application process. So
Okay.
what staff are doing right now is making sure that we're getting all of our ducks aligned in the row. Step one is apply for that innovation fund, showing our commitment as a town of Kentville to the homelessness crisis, and then through that, working on this grant so that we have all of our paperwork ready. And that's working with all departments to make sure that we have all of those lenses used. But it does, and then when it opens, there's I think a really quick window of open opportunity. So making sure that we have everything ready. But it has the potential to be substantial in size. It's a little bit like, if you remember the AT grant, where it's
Yes.
all three levels of government coming into play.
I was just gonna ask
Yeah.
that, if it's Fed only, or if it
Yeah.
probably, yeah, okay.
Yeah, with the intent that by 2026, we've got things going,
Okay,
and people are able to move in.
that's great, wow, thank you. Okay.
I don't know if CAO Troke had anything to add to that. No, okay.
All right, are there any further questions for the director? There are none. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Deputy Chief?
Mayor Snow, CAO, and council. I'm gonna push this little button and watch this thing go off. See that? It's pretty fancy.
Snazzy.
You should have before you a copy of our police commission report from April. I'm sure you've had a chance to go over it. I'm not sure if there's any questions that you might have regarding the report at all. Myself, actually, I missed last commission meeting, and I missed our community engagement session, so I was away on training for both. But I heard they were both very successful, so yeah. Does anybody have any questions about the report?
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, worship.
Yep.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
I think we just seen each other here
We
not too long
did,
ago.
congratulations to your beautiful daughter graduating from grade 12.
No, boyfriend.
Oh, boyfriend, oh, right, okay, Caleb,
Not
yes.
my boyfriend,
Not
daughter's
yet.
boyfriend. Let me correct that.
That's right, Caleb, yeah, okay.
Caleb, yeah.
I had a question about, the human trafficking discussions.
Yes.
I'm just wondering if you could expand a little bit more on that and sort of what's happening, in
For
that
sure.
area. Thank you.
And I wish I had the date right in front of me, and I wanna say it's the 28th or 9th. Yeah, 28th, isn't it?
Okay.
Yeah, 28th of June, we have a day of training basically booked. It's at the fire hall. We have several presenters that are coming forward, and it should be a really good turnout. It's open up to the town. I believe the directors are invited as well.
Okay.
Basically everybody within the town, so they can, because of course we have the youth working in town as well, right? So ideas on if they see things happening, they can pick up and help if needed, so.
Okay.
Yeah, it's, so Sergeant Reed and Ashley Ettinger put that training together. And, yeah, they have a crowd coming in from the city. They have the human trafficking team, someone coming in. There's, it's gonna be a full day for sure. Yeah, it's fully packed, so it should be a good day. And of course, we're opening that up to other members as well, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. And it's happening.
Unfortunately,
Yeah.
yes, yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions for the Deputy Chief? All right, they're letting you off
That's it.
easy tonight, Deputy Chief.
Can we put this back down for you, Dave?
All right, Director Bell, you're back on.
Just the right height.
Good evening again. As Director Matthews mentioned in her report, at the May Kentville Water Commission meeting, the commission approved the operating and capital budgets for 2023, 24. It was reported to the commission that our current water rates are no longer sustainable due to increased operating costs, so a water rate study was approved to be commissioned and will be conducted later this year. Operationally, in May, there were no issues with the Water Commission, and similarly, no issues operationally with the sanitary sewer area service. Under Public Works, the month of May means patch paving and line painting. So most of the line painting around town has been refreshed and has things looking fresh for the first round of patch paving has been completed, with more to come later this month on still some of the main roads and certainly into the side streets. An update on Canaan Avenue. We have received the geotechnical report for the slope failure on Canaan Avenue. To summarize the report, the road itself is not compromised, but the outer slope that has failed will require slope remediation in the form of either a rock-filled berm or a retaining wall. Since it's preferable to reestablish a sidewalk and guardrail as was there before the failure, a retaining wall is the more practical solution. So we're working with the consultant on a retaining wall design in tender now and expect construction to be completed later this summer. Under Traffic Authority, we have had additional communication with Nova Scotia Public Works, formerly Transportation, regarding the location of the lighting for the new bridge, and we are assisting the department with locations that won't interfere with underground infrastructure on both ends of the bridge. Under projects, work continues on curb and sidewalk improvements and replacements around town. We are awaiting a project schedule for the first phase of the McDonald Avenue subdivision rebuild, and we'll be notifying residents as soon as we have something in writing. I actually spoke today with the contractor, and they expect to be on site Wednesday to begin the installation of temporary water, so still probably at least 2 weeks away from really actually excavating, so no major disruptions, and we'll notify the residents of that schedule as soon as we have that from the contractor. The design is nearly complete for the next phase of the AT network project, which includes downtown curb and sidewalk replacements. As well, we're going to piggyback a section in that tender for along the north side of Main Street, in front of Main Street Station between Leverett and the Cornwallis Street sort of intersection of Main. And that's the highlights of my report.
All right, thank you very much, Director. Are there any questions with regards to this report? Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Bell. A few things to point to ask here. One, it's been pointed out to me, but I know this because I go over it every day, that there's a sunken manhole at the bottom of Belcher, right in the
intersection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's creating a bit of an issue because some people are going over it and some people are going around it. And so I'm wondering if we have any time frame when we can look after that.
It does need, we are going to address it this summer. It does need to be cut out. It was a manhole that Transportation, it's an existing manhole that's been there for years, but in fact it was under the old alignment before the new bridge. It was over in the grass area of that side of the old bridge, and now is in the middle of the intersection. So not sure what's going on there. The layer below that steel frame that you see, the next layer must be deteriorated enough that it's causing that frame to shift and settle a bit and then crack the asphalt. So we do need to cut out probably a 3-foot square around it and reestablish that. But unfortunately, it's a very busy intersection and would require traffic control or perhaps even overnight after hours kind of work to do most efficiently.
Okay.
But it's planned for the summer.
Okay, great, thank you. And on Friday at our Inclusion and Accessibility Committee meeting, we had a number of complaints about the Cornwallis Street sidewalk again. And some people that are very upset about that sidewalk. It's not accessible, and it's actually quite dangerous. I've pointed this out before. And there was some discussion that they would like to see this at least smoothed out this budget year and then wait for a big replacement when the underground infrastructure is at a point where you want to replace it. But I'm hoping that we can look at that sidewalk and see if we can cut out sections and add a little asphalt and just make it a little bit more usable for people coming down over that hill.
Yeah, this is the asphalt section you're referring to,
Yes.
between the lights and
Yeah.
where it
It's the
switches
only-
to concrete.
It's the only section that really needs work. Right from the top of the hill, where it switches from asphalt to concrete, the concrete is fine. It's that asphalt section that.
Going uphill.
Yeah, and coming down, yeah.
Sure. Both ways, yeah. Two-way sidewalk.
Yeah,
But-
exactly.
But, yeah, asphalt, and it would be, we could put that through our, our patch paving work where that's operational and not a capital project. But,
Yeah.
we do have an operating patching budget, which, the more we do there, the less could do somewhere else. But I'll try to keep that budget. We did do extra patching last year in places I came to council, I think in September, and we did an extra 20 or 30,000
Yeah.
or maybe it was even more than that, of patching. But I haven't got the first progress claim to see, the amount that was put down in the first round of patching around town, and to see, we think we tendered around we budgeted around $110,000 of patching in the operating budget. So certainly see what's left, and if that's the wish of council, we'll try to direct
Yeah, if you could
direct
bring
some
it to
that
us.
way.
And another thing that came up was the lower Belcher Street from Burke subdivision down. There seems to be quite a few sections along there that aren't very good. And again, just kind of wondering if we can somehow cut out some of those sections that are falling apart. There's not a lot of them, but the ones that are falling apart quite badly. And if we can cut those out and then just pave over it. Both of those came up at our meeting, and we took a little heat on that, so, yeah.
You're talking actually about the sidewalk on.
The sidewalk.
On
It's
Belcher
it's a
as well. Yeah.
pavement.
It's asphalt, that's
It's
right.
asphalt as well, yeah.
But on the Burke side of the road, you're referring to more so, because it's on both.
I think you did
It's
a
only
little
on,
piece.
no, it's only on the north side, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, I think you did a little piece going into the Burke subdivision, but just
Correct.
beyond that, like that it's attached to,
Okay,
that's pretty,
so the south side, the same side
the
as
so,
Burke.
it's the
Yeah,
south side all the
Yeah.
way down the hill.
to the,
It's not all bad, but there are sections that are bad that are not, that, the other sections are doable, but there are places that are just accidents waiting to happen, I guess I'll put it that way.
okay, very good.
Okay. Thank you very much. That's all my.
Councillor York.
Thank you. I do want to reiterate what Councillor Maxwell has said, that section of Cornwallis Street, that section of the sidewalk, while we look at it through an accessibility lens, it is still the only bit of sidewalk we have that would take residents to the hospital and to currently our only grocery store. So the significance of that section is a vital piece. And it's not just accessibility as it relates to people with physical mobility issues, but rather just like a stroller or your feet. It is problematic. And like I said, it is the only bit of sidewalk at the moment that takes you to the hospital and our only grocery store. So it is a very significant piece for the people of the town of Kemptville, and certainly for the residents in that area. And secondly, for the, the road closure intersections that we have on Canaan at the moment, do we have any more permanent structures, or at least less removable or less easily removable signage there so that those can remain easily in place?
We do. I was going to wait first until the contractor got on site to, put up their own concrete barriers, but in the interest of time and safety, I've called the local ready mix company, and they have 4 Jersey barriers in stock that they're going to bring this week to us, ideally this week,
Great.
to replace the wooden barricades with Jersey barriers, which are a concrete barrier that harder to remove or
Not impossible,
by
but
hand,
more
by hand,
difficult.
for sure. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Worship. I think I'll direct this to the CEO if that's all right. So I know when we had our capital budget meeting, we specifically talked about that stretch of sidewalk on Cornwallis Street. And I think, I don't recall what we decided at the time, is that we wouldn't actually put it in the budget, but maybe even though it's something that really needs to be done, is that an amendment that we potentially could make, or maybe I'm going a bit over where we need to be?
CEO?
Yes, so just from a timing perspective, we weren't able to kind of get all of the costs and what the solution was going to be into the budget discussion. So what we said was we were going to price that out. Ideally, in a perfect world, you would do it as all concrete. And however, so the intention would be, once we get that price, that would obviously be a decision point for council. In light of the other side of this, and not to make Director Bell's hair fall out, that he's got a lot of concrete he's ordering this year for downtown and for other work. We'll, as we get a little more information, and we'll be able to kind of quantify it a little bit better than where we are right now. And I think that the price tag going concrete on that section, it'll depend on what that is, on whether there's going to be a short-term or the investment is there to make it and make it the long-term fix. So we just don't know yet what the price tag would be on a concrete poured sidewalk there.
And do we know the underground infrastructure, like if that's quite dated, if it's in a probability?
There is, and I'll get some confirmation from my Public Works lead hand, but it's my understanding there's some storm sewer and possibly some water line there that is both aged enough that it wouldn't make a lot of sense to put concrete over it until it's replaced. But I'll find out if that's the entire length. So I think for the most part, the water line goes up the travel way of the Cornwallis Hill, not under the sidewalk.
Right.
But I know there's some storm sewer under there for sure. Under the sidewalk.
Okay, great, thank you.
Councillor Sapien?
Thank you. I'm not sure if Director Bell or CEO wants to answer this, but we've been this would be my third year here, and I'm wondering if we can get the work done at the Kentville Historical Building, the Heritage Center that we have there. If we can finally get that work done this season around the windows, and I know they've been waiting for a garbage can since, I think, 2020. Can we get that done this year, and should we make a motion to send it back to council next week so that it's finally done? We talk about it every 6 months, and then I don't know if we forget or what happens. There's some work there that needs to be done, and I'd like to see that done this season. So I don't know what the easiest way is to get her done, but I'd like to see it done. Thank you.
CEO?
So last year the roof was done, and there wasn't really, it was expensive. So part of what we were looking to do was to continue to work at 2 or 3 smaller elements. I don't have a timeline on that. I guess ultimately what we could do is similar to the sidewalk, is put together a frame of reference for council, and if council has the decision that they want that work to go out, we could create a budget for it. We would have to go into reserves to do that, but certainly we could try and put a scope of work together. Again, I'm not sure how quickly we get that together, but we can try and get that for council, at least for council's consideration.
Councillor Sapien?
Yeah, thank you. When whoever went over last year, I don't know if it was Director Bell or UCAO, don't we know the scope of what needs to be done or what hasn't been done yet? I think Director Bell went over 1 year, correct? Or somebody went over it?
Yeah, so what happened is there was some painting done, some work around windows were done. However, there was some discussion with the folks at the Historical Society around a number of things they were looking, which included like parking lot and so on. And so that's over a year ago, that conversation. So I guess I would want to know, when we talk about completing the work there, what that scope would be, and then we can put a price tag on it. So I just think we would have to kind of come up with that list, quantify that list, and then basically look to see if council would approve that overage.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any further questions for the director? All right, Director Bell, thank you very much.
Thank you.
CEO, looks like it's your turn.
Thank you very much. So a lot of what my report obviously are covered by staff. And again, I want to say to the directors and all of our staff, thank you for all you're doing. I know folks are flat out on a number of things that are happening. Particularly, there's been substantive changes, obviously, on the finance side, not just with policy, but getting more individuals involved in our budget process. the grants that you heard Recreation talking about, anywhere and everywhere we can to leverage dollars that the federal government or the province has, folks are applying for them. And so I want to thank you all for your diligent work there. The Valley Regional Enterprise Network Audit Committee met on June 6th and approved year-end statements. So the Valley Ren now is using Kent Duffett as their auditor. So this is a new audit process, and I'm going to say for a new auditor coming in, it seemed very seamless. I think that they were able to complete the majority of the work in about a week's period. So for coming in new, it was very rapid. But I also think that the folks at the Valley Ren were meticulous in their records, so I believe that helped out in the process as well. You heard that we have some job postings out there, and our process a little different than what we've done in other years. So as if we get 2 or 3 applicants that look good and are qualified, we're interviewing as we go along. Part of that is to not wait for 4 or 5 or 6 weeks if we have applicants coming in. If we've got the right person shows up and they're the right fit for the job, then obviously we want to move. But also you got to fit that in between all the other work that folks are doing. The Heritage Committee had met, and there was an opportunity to review the municipal bylaws, and developing the future work will be developing some scope around consideration of those heritage properties. So more to go, or more continuing work there. Council this week would have received, or last week would have received from the province, the Joint Regional Transportation Agency, which is a new agency that is essentially looking at travel and transportation within an hour radius of HRM. And so many folks will know Mr. Mark Peck, so he is the new CEO for the agency. We had an opportunity a few weeks ago to have a Zoom meeting where all of the municipal units and the staff at the Joint Regional Transportation Agency met. And out of that came the letter and the terms of reference the council received. So one of those pieces that I would be looking for council, or for committee to move to council, would be that the appointment of the CAO and an alternate. So in most cases, that would be your engineering and planning folks. So Director Bell, I would put forward as my alternate. And if that could occur, then we could inform the Joint Regional Transportation Agency and we could start the work. You'll also notice that they're going to be doing a number of pop-up events. So there is a Kentville event planned on June 20th from 4:30 to 7:30 at the Valley Community Learning Association. I don't have a whole lot more details than what's there, but happy to get them and bring that forward for anybody who needs further information.
All right, CAO, before we go to questions, let's take your recommendation to motion for the Joint Regional Transportation Agency that CAC recommends approval of the appointment of the Town of Kentville CAO and as the alternate, the Director of Engineering to the JRTA Working Group to Council at the June 26, 2023 meeting of Council. If someone could move that, please. Deputy Mayor, thank you, and a seconder. Councillor Huntley, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that CAC recommends approval of the appointment of the Town of Kentville CAO and as the alternate, Director of Engineering to the JRTA Working Group to Council at the June 26, 2023 meeting of Council. Is there any discussion on this matter? Are you ready for the question? The question is that CAC recommends approval of the appointment of the Town of Kentville CAO and as the alternate, the Director of Engineering to the JRTA Working Group to Council at the June 26, 2023 meeting of Council. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed. And that motion is carried. Thank you very much. And now, are there any questions for the CAO on his report? Councillor Gerard.
Thank you, Worship. CAO, I'm just curious as to why the province is collaborating with municipalities about their own streets and travel, transportation. You and I had this sounds very much like 15-minute cities, and I would caution all the councilors to do all the research they can on 15-minute cities. They're very restrictive.
So in this case here, they're actually looking to put forward a strategy. And so that strategy would inform things like investments. And if you think about within that hour radius of HRM, you've got a number of major transportation hubs. As the province intends to double in size, and those areas within an hour of HRM will obviously be places that will not just be bedroom communities, but service hubs. And so they're looking for feedback from the municipal units who really become the conduit to, for example, our own Valley Transportation providers, to nonprofit organizations, or even those municipal units that have active transportation plans that might feed into how this is all going to come together. This is very, very, very early days on this for the province. And I would say that this is kind of that, let's come up with the visioning component of this before we drop down into the, what are we going to do and what that's going to look like.
Or it's a good time to nip it in the bud. Thank you. Thank you.
Are there any further discussion on, what am I doing? I don't even know what I'm doing now that he threw that at us.
Any other questions for the CA?
Okay, questions for the CAO. Are there any further questions for the CAO on his report? All right, very well then. That ends our reports. We have no business arising from the minutes or from old business. However, we do have a piece of correspondence from the Ecology Action Center, and it's with regards to the coastal protection. Thank you very much, staff, for your reports this evening. With regards to the Coastal Protection Act joint letter, so as you know, it has passed, and the legislation has passed, and the government has gone out again to do more consultation. And although this does not really directly affect the town of Kentville, anything to do with the coast, with us living on the river, could affect us. So what they are asking is that municipalities sign on to, I guess, put pressure on Minister Hellman to go ahead and put the policy out, and no more delays. So what I'm asking for you, or from you, is by consent. So if no one has any objection, that we add the town of Kentville to this letter with other municipalities that are doing it. So is there any objection? There being no objection, then a letter will basically go to Ecology Action Center saying that we will sign on with the other municipalities in Nova Scotia to continue with this work. All right, so that brings us to new business. So we've had a presentation. CAO, did you want to speak to this before I open the floor to discussion?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. So there was a lot of dialogue's been happening with our staff of recreation and the presenters tonight as a group. They certainly have gained a lot of momentum in trying to move the project forward. What I think would be valuable for council's consideration is putting a staff report together to go with the presentation that you have, and just kind of get a flavor for our recreation's perspective, but also from a costing perspective, kind of where this would fit us. This is a piece of property that the town owns that they're making a request for. and there is both a, we'll call it a capital and an operational request here. And so I think it's important for council to layer this with A, other requests that we've had from other facilities, but B, also to make sure you can visualize what the request would mean, and by support what that would look like. So basically bringing this back to both our recreation and our finance folks, and bringing a report back to council, so you'd be in that position to line up the presentation with kind of that internal information.
Thank you, CAO. So based on the CAO's recommendation, we'll put it to motion, and then we can open the floor up to discussion. So the motion would be that CAC direct the CAO to provide a staff report on recommendations and a way forward on this initiative. Would somebody move that? Thank you, Councillor Gerard and Deputy Mayor. So it has been moved and seconded that CAC direct the CAO to provide a staff report on the recommendations and a way forward on this initiative. And Councillor Gerard, you've got your light on.
Thank you, Worship. It was a very ambitious presentation. I like the idea. I think obviously it's gonna go back to staff, but in the meantime, do they need a letter of support from the town if they're gonna approach the province and the feds and Tennis Canada or whichever? Because a lot of times we deal with organizations that are looking for money, but they need the town's support.
Go ahead, CAO, please.
I will double check. Craig Galangelo's been having a lot of conversations with the group, so I don't know if that was requested or not. But what I can do is, if that is the case, then I can inform at council if there is a letter needed.
And if I may, can you find out, CAO, I remember when it was a bunch of, actually they were the owners of the King's Arms pub at the time, some of them were, and there were some outside people, but they were the ones who pursued the soccer dome. Is there any documentation that the town would have on how they went about pursuing it? Because it sounds to me that this group wants to do almost exactly the same thing, but I wasn't on the inside, I just worked there, so I heard a lot about it, but I didn't.
I think that is very much why I think it's important as staff report to line up how other support for other facilities has happened over time. So obviously, not necessarily that everything is always consistent, but I think it's important. And certainly I myself was not part of that, but I have looked at files associated with the creation of the soccer facility, and I know there was a number of different asks and support by the town that was things that were even outside of just fiscal or monetary requests up front.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Worship. Mayor Snow, you could probably remind all of us of this, but with the Credit Union Rec Complex, they accumulated their property tax, and then we forgave it on a per annum basis, and that was essentially that in and out and that gift, right?
That's correct, and it was based on their mortgage. So as long as they had a mortgage,
Right.
they basically didn't pay property taxes. And then what we did, when their mortgage was paid off, and they were putting the new field
That's
in,
right, yeah.
we gave them, because they were looking for $25,000 a year,
Yeah.
and instead we gave them the in and out on the taxes. But that was
Okay.
only for a 5-year, and that has expired. So at this point in time, they pay property taxes.
Okay. And this is probably directed to the CAO through the chair, did they give a sense, or have they given a sense to Craig if they're gonna do any finance, or a portion of this being financed in any way?
So at this point in time, I believe the conversation's strictly been around how they can get capital and seed money.
Okay,
I don't have any particulars around finance.
okay.
I also think it depends on, do they use the 2.5 or a $5 million option around what they're going to need.
Right.
I think at this moment is the Tennis Canada funding is the only funding that has firmly landed. And I think the monies in which you see they've applied both for Kings and from the province are, even those, there's a sliding scale as to how much of it might they get. So I think the money coming in might also help drive the decision on, do you go with the inflatable versus the permanent structure
Right.
building?
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you. I'm glad we're going to go to a staff report on this. I like the idea very much. I think this is one of the first visions that I have in my mind of a facility that can host winter events and bring people to town during the winter, which spearheads, hopefully in the future, a motel or a hotel in this area. And, you know, if we get a wellness center going along with that, then I think we've really done something. So this is the first facility that can host tennis championships, pickleball championships, and, you know, that's a World Cup event now, I believe. It's a big event, and so I can see this as being kind of like a kickoff for that. So, thank you.
Councillor Zabian.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, the initiative's good, and I don't even have a problem personally with them acquiring the land for use. It's just, I would want to see a staff report with the finances. That's a lot of money to just whip out of our back pocket, 500,000. And there's a lot of things that we haven't done that we probably should have, and our own facilities, like our rink, is still up in the air too. So I mean, to bring out $500,000 and say here, that's a big chunk. So the land, I say go for it, but I'd want more details on that before I even came close to a decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor York.
Thank you, and it's piggybacking on what Councillor Zabian said, because he's right, it's a lot of money to think about, especially in relation to all the other projects we have on the go in our existing infrastructure. So I'm wondering, I know there was a conversation had about sort of like a report on our existing facilities and where they are and what we need. If we could get those kind of concurrently, so that we're not making siloed decisions when we're talking about potential funding.
Do we want to amend this motion, or the fact that we've already asked for it is good enough?
I would say part of the magnitude around our own facilities thing might be enough, I think, for council when we start talking about rink repair or rink replacement. And so that in itself might be enough to kind of look at how that all flows together. I would say that I also would like to sit down with Director Bedingfield and Mr. Langell to kind of get a sense on where that work has gone to a place that if tying them together makes sense, because I'm not sure how far down that road they necessarily may have gone.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you. I was just thinking with the 500,000 is, we wouldn't take that out in one chunk. It would be over a period of years, similar to what we did with Landmark East and so on. So I think that's what I would expect our finance people to be looking at. Thank you.
I would actually, I'm going to suggest yes, but I actually would want to take a look at that request, how it's even made up, because I'm not even sure if 100% of it is cash, for lack of a better word. So we'd want to take a look at that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Huntley.
And I just want to say that I look forward to seeing that report by the staff, because right now, there's not enough meat in here to actually make any decision or ruling. So, thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on this matter? Are you ready for the question? The question is that CAC direct the CAO to provide a staff report on the recommendations and a way forward on this initiative. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed, and the motion is carried. Thank you. And you've got that, CAO?
I do.
All right, very good. So that ends our business for this evening. We do have the floor open to public comments, and members of the public are invited to speak to council on any agenda item. You will be provided with 3 minutes to speak, and please provide your name and address prior to speaking.
I don't know if I can do this, but am I allowed to ask a question? Not about this. What I want to know, I'll tell you what I want to know is, you had the environmental meeting, it was canceled, and then they had a rain day and it was canceled. And if they're going to have it again, do you know if they're going to have it again, or is it canceled altogether? Does anybody know? Or are you allowed to talk about that?
It's been rescheduled. Is this the Oak Dean event?
They're going to have all the environmental, electric cars and everything else up there.
Yeah, it's been moved to September. You'll start seeing, notices about it soon.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Cousins, didn't know. All right. Thank you very much. We have no in-camera this evening, and there being no further business, this meeting is adjourned, and the time is 7:45. Thank you.